Coming up next on Executive Caterers Corporate Club at Landerhaven, we're talking rock and roll with Terry Stewart, CEO of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame and Museum in Cleveland, Joel Peresman, CEO of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame Foundation in New York, and they'll be discussing the upcoming inductions with NewsChannel 5 anchor Lee Jordan. They'll also be talking about the role of the Rock Hall in Cleveland's economy and the education programs that they run there.
From the Grand Ballroom at Executive Caterers at Landerhaven, thank you for joining us as we celebrate more than 20 years of presenting important and timely discussions. Corporate Club is the direct link for community leaders to connect with regional businesses, government, and nonprofit organizations. This series of programs deals with those issues and persons that impact on the lives of those who live in Northeastern Ohio. Corporate Club at Landerhaven begins right now.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Corporate Club at Landerhaven, and I am delighted to see all of you here today for a really special panel on the Rock Hall Inductions 2012. So I'm looking around the room and I'm thinking, you know, I thought some of you would be rocking the black leather today. No? Well, you know, rock isn't just a black leather jacket. It's also a Nehru jacket. It's a chiffon dress, and it's a meat dress. It's a military uniform, and it's a conical-shaped bra that looks like it could fire ammunition. It's a baseball cap, and it's a sequin glove. It's all of these things. And we're going to talk all things Rock Hall today with two people who couldn't be better at letting us all in on how some of this works, how the inductions came to Cleveland, and why this has such an impact for all of us. I'm Lee Jordan from NewsChannel 5, and I am very proud and honored to introduce our two panelists here today. I'd like to welcome Joel Peresman from New York, the CEO of the Rock Hall Foundation, and the CEO of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, Terry Stewart. Great to have both of you here.
Nice to be here.
So the inductions were last here in 2009, and as promised, 3 years later, 2012, they are back again. So I want to talk about some of the different aspects of not only all of the special things that are happening leading up to the inductions over about a 10-day period, but really to begin with how the Rock Hall here works with the foundation to bring the induction here to Cleveland.
Well, I think it's lost too often that when the city was fighting for the rights to have the museum, that the foundation was in place. They've been doing the inductions for a number of years, and we were lucky enough to win that battle and really had this museum built here. And it was always understood that we could have the inductions here if we were willing to take on the financial risk, which it's substantial. Even for one night, it's substantial. And fortunately, a few years ago, when Joel Peresman came on board at the foundation, he really understood our need to have it here periodically so that we connect with the city about the inductions. And then on top of that, very fortunately, the mayor of our great city, Frank Jackson, came and asked me what would it take to make that happen. I said, we really just can't afford to take that financial risk without support from the community at this stage of our life cycle at the museum. So the mayor was generous enough to find a way to financially support the inductions in 2009 and promise support for this year in 2012. And then I worked with Joel to figure out how we make this happen here and where we make it happen.
How does the foundation fit into all of this?
Well, the foundation is the organization, obviously it started the Hall of Fame, and there was always, we exist to support the Rock and Roll Hall. That's our pure reason for being, and that was always what we look to do. We're a fundraising arm, we're a marketing arm, we're help on sponsorship, we help on every level that we can, because ultimately we want this place to be as successful as possible and drive as much business as we can to Cleveland. So the idea of doing the induction ceremonies here was never something that was just completely foreign to us or something we're never going to do. It was done, when was it? 97.
Mm-hmm.
Not done well, from a, I think from an operational standpoint, more from a financial standpoint. There was always a question that, we'll be happy to do it in Cleveland if there's a setup that we can do this and make it work financially for everybody. And under Terry's leadership and from the great board that they have here, we came up with a model that makes it work. So now there's a way to do it every 3 years.
And it has to be said, I mean, with the induction and overall, the Rock Hall financially has really worked, not only as an entity on its own legs, but also with the kind of impact that it has in Northeast Ohio.
Yeah, we've been even more effective in bringing people to Cleveland than we ever expected. When the feasibility studies were done for the museum in the late 80s and early 90s, the financial impact was expected to be somewhere around $10 to $20 million. And as it turns out, it's over $100 million a year. And that's in the years when we don't have the inductions. The inductions are another $13, $14, $15 million on top of that. So yes, we are a museum, but we're also a magnet to bringing people to Cleveland and really having an impact on the city and its population.
Yeah, it's something like hundreds of thousands of people a year are visiting the Rock Hall from all over the country and from all over the world.
Yeah, it's about 90% of our attendance is from outside the region. We always talk about there's 50 states and 100 countries that represent those who come to the museum, and it's 500,000 people a year. It's very, very significant.
So a lot of people will be coming to Cleveland to participate in the festivities that
With
are
or
leading
without
up to the...
ticket. They just show up
or
here.
without
People
tickets.
come, fans come. I mean, was it 75% of the people coming from out of town? I think 25% of the people showed up. Hundreds of people showed up without tickets, like Terry said,
Right.
just to be around.
We were talking a few minutes earlier about how the way this was all put together really was intended to allow as many fans as possible to be part of the induction.
Well, it's great to be able to have that. We just don't have that option when we do it in New York, just because of the limited venues and just the availability of certain venues and the cost of doing venues. When we're looking to do it in Cleveland, we looked around at a number of different places, and Public Hall, because of the setup where we could do what we wanted to do, which was be able to have a dinner, but also have the opportunity to have 4,000 or 5,000 people that can attend and make this thing work, was really attractive. Plus, just the history of the place. I mean, the history of people that have played there, the sight lines, everything just really worked to make this Public Hall just really be the perfect venue for this.
Very appealing for everybody
people
involved.
that, from the last time that were pissing and moaning about having the show being in Cleveland, some of these managers, they said, look, we never want to have one of our acts inducted unless it's in Cleveland.
Oh, that's great. That's great to hear. There are a lot of things happening in the 10 days ahead. And of course, last week, we got a little glimpse into something new that's coming, and that is the Walk of Fame. Talk about that.
Well, we wanted to make sure that when we have the inductions here, that it just doesn't happen on one night, because we have it every 3 years. So we want to have enough of a profile. And as part of that profile this time around, which is even larger than it was 3 years ago, we're going to kick off with the sort of announcement about the Walk Hall of Fame. We sort of previewed it last week, as you suggested. And this is an opportunity for us to connect all the districts downtown with the classic plaque in the ground. We have 270 inductees, and we think we can really spread those out all over downtown Cleveland. And it'll be another marketing asset for the city, whereas a lot of fans are going to want to go find the plaque of their favorite artist, have the photograph taken with it. We actually see people laying on the ground. You can envision standing on their heads doing crazy things. They'll put it online. It'll be part of social media. Just another way to remind people to come to Cleveland and see the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. So we'll hope to kick that off on April 5th when we make the press conference announcement. And then over the next several years, we'll, on a time certain, we will get all the plaques down for all the inductees. And then every year, the intention is when we don't have the inductions here, we have our annual gala, which we think is the party of the year here in Cleveland, is that we will make sure that we have some of the inductees that year present to perform, and at the same time, we'll have the installation of the plaques for that class that year, and they'll be here to. So it'll really become the Walk of Fame gala in the years when we don't have the induction here.
We'll take bets on which one's the first one stolen.
Oh, no. Well, this is also a good new fundraising opportunity for the museum as well.
Yes, we're going to find ways to fund these because there is a substantial cost to both the plaque and installation. And we hope to be able to, as we've done this year at the outset, find ways to make them available if any of you are so generous to want to be part of this. Many of these artists will be available starting probably right after the inductions, and any net proceeds from this will go into the induction fund. We have to find a dedicated revenue stream over time so that we don't have to go back to the city and everybody else to fund this every 3 years. So this will be a small part of that revenue stream that allows us to fund the inductions every 3 years when they come back to Cleveland.
I think there are so many people who would really like to see, here you are with the Walk of Fame. I mean, you're reaching out beyond that footprint of the Rock Hall itself, as you do with education programs, long-distance learning, and so many other things, but to really be embraced as part of an overall image of the city that rocks, Cleveland rocks. And this is something a lot of us talk about, and one of my colleagues, Leon Bibb, has written about this many times. That
Love Leon.
From the time you get to the
He's
airport,
a very
that
bright
this is
and
what...
insightful man. I've always said that about him.
Well, it's for someone that doesn't live in Cleveland, I mean, the idea of Cleveland rocks just makes sense, and it has even before I've had this job. I mean, that's what people think.
Yes.
And to be able to adopt that and have that, because people around the world, that's when you talk about Cleveland, it comes up.
That's
And like we were saying, to be able to expand this, so when people get off the airplanes, when they're at the airport, it should be everything that's what it should be. This is what, not that there's not other great businesses and other things in the city, but people around the world know this.
Right.
And I think hopefully that's something that can expand, and when people get off an airplane and they start walking through the airport, they get an idea that this is where it is. Because right now, you just don't see that. And with all due respect to the educators in the audience, I mean, there's so many ads for colleges there, and there's nothing for the Rock Hall. I never understood that. I mean, people like, oh, I forgot to go to college? Oh, there's an ad, let's go. But I'm sure there's a good reason, and I hope I'm not offending anybody, but, too bad. I mean, I think there's an opportunity here to really kind of expand on this.
It's a tremendous opportunity, and as you like to say, Terry, it's a verb.
It's a verb, it's not a noun. And all these assets that we have here rock besides the museum. So it's a very easy, I think an easy sort of headline that embraces all the great cultural assets and the arts organizations and everything else that we love about Cleveland. Cleveland really does rock, and we know that. So hopefully by the next time the inductions are here, we won't have to have this discussion,
Well, so with the induction coming, there are other concerts and events in those days leading up to that event on Saturday, the 14th of April.
Well, as I said, we wanted to make sure that it wasn't like the circus that comes to town one night and then disappears, because we wait so long for this that it should have a profile that's significant. And we're lucky because we get significant funding from the city and the state and the foundations that it's only right that we give back to the populace here on some level that's free. So besides the inductions themselves, we have some club shows, because a number of the clubs are our partners. We're doing a DJ show on Saturday night with a fellow out of Case University called Girl Talk, one of the leading DJs, or I should say musicians with turntables. That's one of the expressions they like to use these days. We have a gospel award show that we did 3 years ago. We'll be doing that at Playhouse Square. They're one of our partners. We're dedicating the Library and Archives on Monday, which is very, very significant. We've opened the Library and Archives over at Tri-C, but on that Monday we'll have some panels, some folks in talking about it. We'll fully sort of cut the ribbon that day, and we would encourage all of you to remember that besides the museum, there's a free experience for you over at Tri-C. You can walk into the library and you can virtually experience every periodical, movie, record, CD, whatever we have that's in that great reservoir of material, and it's growing all the time. Wednesday, we open our next big exhibit, the Grateful Dead exhibit, and Mickey Hart's band from the Grateful Dead will be here performing. Thursday, we have our big free show for Cleveland at the Q, and those artists will be announced shortly. Friday night, we have our thank you party for all the donors and supporters and sponsors, and of course, Saturday, the museum is open free to the public. We expect to have between 5,000 and 10,000 people come through the museum that day, and of course, we got the inductions at Public Hall on Saturday night. So it's really about 10 days of activities that we hope everybody participates at some level, if not at all levels.
And this year, HBO is your broadcast partner for the event.
Yeah, that's the first year. They were our partners on the 25th anniversary shows that we did, and things
they were
worked
phenomenal.
well. Yeah, and again, those worked well, and raised over. So far, we've raised over $5.5 million. That's come directly to the museum to create an endowment for the museum. That's where all the net proceeds went for that, and we got a good partnership with HBO. They liked what they saw. So we're basically have another year with them to create something that hopefully will be a yearly event for them, but it'll definitely be for this year, which is, for the museum, it's fabulous, because the marketing that a company like HBO does, as opposed to our previous broadcast partners, is much more extensive. seen by a lot more people. They promote things, they work hard, and it'll be shown the first week of May in an edited version from
Really a great
in
match.
April. It is.
They do big
We hope it
events so
works.
well.
We hope we can put something together for them that they like, that they'll want to do every year, because for us, it's a great partner to have.
One of the good problems we have is that we are sold out, and I hope all of you in here have tickets. I apologize if you don't. But the good news is, and we haven't started yet, the entire show is simulcast at the museum that night. So other than being at the public hall event, you can see the show unedited down at the museum that night, and there will be a large number of tickets available with that. So if any of you are frustrated and still want to see it, come down to the museum, get a ticket, and you can have that.
Those tickets that were available for the induction in public hall, they sold out in what?
About 4 minutes, 5
4
minutes.
minutes, yeah.
Yeah, and people were frustrated, we understand that, but even with the ability to sell or have 4,000 or 5,000 tickets available to the public, imagine any concert of this magnitude with the stars that will be there. Any show like that is going to sell out in a similar amount of time anywhere around America. So it's just a phenomenon, and it's a wonderful phenomenon. It's a good problem to have.
Before we take a short break, I want to go back to the library and archives, which is just such a tremendous development, because originally there was going to be a kind of archive in the Rock Hall itself, but then you realized that there was not going to be enough space there to house all of the materials that you'd want to have.
Yeah, downstairs where our county staff and other folks sat was going to be the library and archives, and for anybody who doesn't remember, actually that staff was sitting over at Tower City or somewhere, and when they realized it was not a good idea to have the staff removed from the museum and they placed it in the museum, suddenly we lost that library archive space. That's probably a blessing, because we would have never been able to utilize, we would have filled that up in an hour and a half. Now we have a state-of-the-art building on the Tri-C campus. Dr. Jerry Sue Thornton very generously allowed us and gave us that shell of the building, and we raised the money to finish it out. And it is a one-of-a-kind institution in the world. We've already had scholars in there doing research. We will start Arthur programs for book signings and book readings, other symposiums coming up, and we expect that to really be a cultural center for people coming from around the world to study the history of popular music. And if you hear us talk about the history of rock music, it's a very broad spectrum of music, because you can't really put rock and roll into a box. Everybody tries to.
Everybody tries to.
And they get very frustrated by that. But we and musicologists around the world find it worthwhile, so it allows us to have an institution where we can expose all the materials that we had in the museum, where we couldn't make them accessible to anyone before, and now that's all possible. So I urge all of you to come over there, and also Dr. Lauren Onke, who runs all the educational programs. She'll be really expanding those programs over at the library in the coming months. Pay attention to our marketing about those events, and come experience what we're doing at the library.
The education arm of the museum has so many avenues for reaching people here and across the country and around the world. It's remarkable.
Yeah, we're very proud, and it does get lost in the shovel of the glitzy exhibits and some of the performances, but when you get right down to it, half of our mission is about education. And we've been doing that since we opened, and we cover the gamut from toddlers at risk, 3 to 5 years old, with our toddler rock program using musical therapists out of University Hospital. We teach classes in the 1st to 12th grades. We teach math, science, social studies, language arts, finance, and we use the power of the music that we celebrate to reach these kids. We teach at all the universities here, and as you mentioned, our online interactive teaching has been voted by teachers the best content provider the last 4 years in a row. So we are very, very, very proud of what we've achieved in a very short time educationally. And if any of you folks would like to see those classes, we can make that possible for you too. We're very, very eager to have folks come down and sit with the kids of all ages to see what we do using the power of rock and roll to teach them.
It's a lot of fun to watch.
It is.
It really is. All right. We're going to take a very short break here in the program, and we'll come back with more from Terry Stewart and Joel Peresman, and talk about some of the criteria used to decide who gets in the Rock Hall. I know that probably a lot of opinions in the room about that.
Landerhaven was created for that special moment in people's lives, and that special moment is a wedding reception. From the concept to the decorations to the entrance down the staircase, creating the magic with great service, fine wine and food, an elegant wedding cake, Beautiful grounds and gardens, unforgettable images. For a wedding reception you'll always remember, Executive Caterers at Landerhaven.
Is it getting so frustrating at your office that it's harder and harder and harder to get any work done? You need services you can count on, starting with business class phone from Time Warner Cable Business Class. Get business class phone and receive up to 6 months free internet or cable TV. Why put up with more frustrations than you have to? Enjoy our reliable solutions. Get business class phone and receive up to 6 months free internet or cable TV. Time Warner Cable Business Class.
Hi, I'm John Salante and I live in Brunswick, Ohio. WVIZ is our source for entertainment, masterpiece theater, great performances, programs such as Applause that bring us weekly a look at the different performers in the area. WVIZ has enhanced our lives. It is an opportunity brought into into our home to watch something that we never had before, to bring the community itself directly to your home.
For a wedding reception you'll always remember, Executive Caterers at Landerhaven.
Welcome back to Executive Caterers Corporate Club at Landerhaven. I'm here with the CEO of the Rock Hall Foundation, Joel Peresman, and also the CEO of the Rock Hall here in Cleveland, Terry Stewart. So, I think everyone's favorite thing to talk about every year when it's time to look at the inductees for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame is who's being inducted, who's been passed over, how do these people in New York decide this? This is, this arouses a lot of passion in people.
Well, I'm sure it does, but it's not people in New York making this decision. I mean, there's always this kind of misconception that there's 3 or 4 people in a darkened room in Manhattan, kind of like, I'm going to pick these people out.
Because I like them.
Yeah, because you like them. Maybe it's a good news story for you, I don't know. But anyway, it doesn't work that way. I mean, it's as a democratic as possible process where there's a group of 35, of which Terry is a member, people that are very knowledgeable about music from a variety of backgrounds. It's people from Terry's background, it's artists, it's managers, it's other people in the business, it's writers, it's critics. They're people that are chosen that have a deep knowledge of the history of rock and roll from a very disparate group. I mean, some people like a lot of different things. And people come into a room, there's not a darkened room, it's very light and they serve sandwiches. And people have to put together what their choices are. Everyone gets to pick 3 people or 3 artists, and they have to say why these people are significant, why they feel they should be inducted. It doesn't necessarily have to be about the amount of album sales that they've had or the amount of tickets they've sold. It's really looking at their significance and their contribution to the history and the current state of music as well. These artists are talked about, they're discussed, they're argued. It's done very respectfully in this room. They're voted upon to get us down to the group of generally around 15 nominees out of the initial list is probably about 50, probably, right? That those names are the nominees for that year. That goes to a larger group of people made up of past inductees and other people within the music business. That's about a little under 600 people. That's voted upon to get us down to the ones we choose for induction. And then there's some side categories which we've seen that are picked by smaller committees.
Well, I know you've seen the same articles that I have that suggest that somehow that it has to do with, even in a political climate, that it's like, a red state, blue state thing, or that it has something to do with ideology, on the part of the bands or the artists.
Well, it has this ideology if people think that, frankly. It's, I just don't understand that because it's not. I mean, that's how, I think a lot of it just because people want to know how it works.
Yeah.
I think it's just more of an non-understanding, or people don't know how the process works, and again, they feel it's just a couple of people controlling it, but it's not. I mean, it is as kind of open, as democratic as possible, and it's really not down to people's political feelings. It's about their contributions to rock.
Do you ever talk about Yes?
All the time. All the time. You get, sure, like we were talking about before, you just get, once people find out what you do,
Right.
you just get pounded by how come. You almost want to be like in, a completely different business. As soon as you know what you say you do, you know where it's going.
That's very funny.
But the thing about it is just, artists can always be inducted. It's not something that, once someone's eligible for induction, that's it.
Mm-hmm.
If they don't make
Has
it
to be that year.
it's not sequential, it just happens.
Mm-hmm.
They can keep on, and there's artists that have been nominated and talked about for years before they get inducted, and it's always an open book, and people are obviously very passionate about their favorite artists.
Oh, yeah.
And they let you know about it.
You've seen a little of that, haven't you, Terry?
Virtually, somebody stopped me out there and tried to convince me about Rush, and I know there's a bunch of Rush fans in here. I think
They had 14 platinum albums.
Yes. Now you know who stopped me out there and asked me about Rush. I think the one element that they really dislike, and I try to explain to them, they want to know why they can't be on the panel, individually, or why they can't vote. And we explained to them that it is not ever going to be turned into a popularity contest like American Idol. And none of the other halls of fame do that either. Everybody uses the same process of sorts, in the sense you have a panel of experts that nominate, you have a bigger panel of experts that vote. That way it keeps it down to a group theoretically that's very knowledgeable about this. Unfortunately, they're not always going to agree with everybody's feeling about every artist getting in when they think they should get in. We remind them that people like Jim Rice and others who have been passed over, Jim Rice for decades was passed over, and eventually athletes fall off a list. They aren't even eligible anymore unless they're submitted by a special committee. Our artists never retire, so they're never taken off the list. As long as they're with us, they're eligible, and we have a manual that lists everybody. It's 25 years after your first recording. And then we have all those listed every year. Then we literally have a giant book that lists everybody that's ever been nominated, all those who have should be nominated, and it's very, very detailed, and it goes deep into popular music, and you would be surprised at all the artists that are in that book that could be nominated. It's virtually anybody you could think of.
Mm-hmm. You get some nice emails, I understand.
I do. And for the sake of television, I will give you the euphemistic version. The nice ones start out, "Dear moron," and then they get worse from that. And we try to respond to all of those, as Joel said, to explain the process, whether they accept it or not. And we do get emails back saying, "Oh, thank you. I didn't think you would ever respond. I didn't know how the process worked. And I'm still sorry that KISS or Rush didn't get in, but at least now I know." Now, certain people are never going to accept that explanation.
Right.
But, it's also about the passion that people have for this music. That's why we're lucky. We have a museum and an institution that celebrates an art form that means so much to all the generations that have come into existence since the 50s. And we're very proud of that. And one of the things we try to do is harness that passion. So when people stop caring and when they stop grabbing me and saying, "Why the heck isn't Rush inducted?" then we have a problem. That's when we have a problem.
Well, I imagine as people are presenting their cases for who they think should be, and there's a fair amount of passion in that discussion as well.
Of course there is, because no one's wrong, in their opinion. Sometimes you might think people are wrong because they get really out there, but no one's wrong in their opinions, and they're not 100% right. So that's why you have a group of different people with different tastes that are smart. So you can really have a really smart, lively discussion, and people can have the opportunity to present their case of why they think their person is worthy of being inducted.
Mm-hmm. People, they think about, rock and roll and the whole form of the music and the sort of, the anarchy that it all comes from. And yet, here we have this institution and kind of trying to put a museum around all of this. And, I wonder if, Terry, if you think about it as a museum, because I think of it, and especially looking at what's happening now, it's kind of a living thing that's always sort of shifting and changing a little bit.
We're very blessed and challenged by the fact that this music never stops. It continues to evolve. Every week there are new artists trying to take the music in new directions, and we, as an institution, are challenged to understand, listen to, and try to evaluate what role those artists might take in the future. So we're out there with a great curatorial group led by Jim Hinkey, trying to meet these groups and remind them who we are and that they may someday play a role in that. So you're exactly right. This is a living, breathing sort of gathering place for popular music. And we define rock in a very broad sense. We trace it back to its African-American roots and the rhythms and beats that come over with slaves. And then the evolution, this river of music that continues to move forward and challenges, but also has changed the world. I still believe it's the most impactful art form ever created by man, because it's an art form that's played a huge role in civil rights, women's rights, the Green Movement, it's elected presidents. You're hard-pressed to think of another art form that's played that kind of role in our lives and continues, as I say, challenges how we dress, how we cut our hair, how we don't cut our hair, how we think, how we accept people that are different. That's all part of a role that these artists have taken on and a mantle they've taken on in the last 50, 60 years. And we try to make sure that that part of the music, that impact, is embraced by our education programs and our exhibits.
Mm-hmm. Now, the museum is undergoing a redesign of some of the exhibit spaces. Tell us a little bit about what's happening there.
Well, we had a capital campaign program several years ago that we were just a little bit short of fulfilling. And Greg Harris, who's head of development, would hit me if I didn't say that we need a couple more donations for that. But we've been very successful. The Foundation of New York has played a huge role in the last years since Joel came on board to help us meet our objectives on the capital side, which was to build out the library and archives, renovate the museum, and then at the same time put in place an operating reserve for the library specifically. Libraries eat cash. They generate virtually no revenue, and you need to have that in place before you open one of these institutions, because you have to look at it on the long term. But relative to renovations, we worked with New York and Joel and Jan Winter to sort of look, how can we improve a great experience? We have great response from 90-some% of the that visit, and so we stepped back and said, over the 15 years prior to this, what can we do better about who we are and what we are? So we've now about 99% complete. We've got a few punch list items done, so those of you who haven't been to the museum, it is a new experience now, technologically speaking. It's a new experience in the layout of the exhibits, and we try to make sure that you find your way through the museum better, and you'll find a lot of new wayfinding and highlights and new exhibits too. So it's a new experience. We believe in one that's much better for our constituency.
So with the Grateful Dead exhibit coming in, how does something like that get started? How is that decision made, and how is it all pulled together?
Well, we work with New York on the exhibits to put forth ideas of exhibits that will have some power to draw people to Cleveland, but it is about our mission. So we try to make sure that we're sort of meeting the sort of criteria that we look at every day in everything that we do. And we also try to make sure if we do an exhibit around artists, that we're able to work with the artists themselves. Because yes, we could go off and do a Grateful Dead exhibit without them. We have the material, we could find the material. But really to make it what it should be, we have to make sure that they're available, that they're going to play some role in it. And that's very difficult sometimes because the artists have a lot of things going on, whether it's touring, recording. And so the Grateful Dead is an exhibit we've wanted to do for a number of years. And finally, the doors and the windows sort of opened up. The opportunity was there. The band was able to help us. They had gotten together some of their archives that were then made available to us. And we're very excited because there are an awful lot of deadheads, and I could probably find a few in here, maybe more.
Any deadheads in here? Come on, raise your hands.
Yeah.
We know you've got a tie-dye T-shirt at home somewhere.
And I'm proud to say one or two of them are my board members. I just saw their hand hardly got above their head, but that was okay. I still saw them. So we're excited because there are so many deadheads and so many fan groups around the nation that we feel like once this is fully up there and publicized and fans see what's there, that they'll make that pilgrimage here to Cleveland.
Very exciting. So back when you had the Bruce Springsteen exhibit there, did the boss come and take a look at all that?
The last day, right?
The last
Great story.
day.
He kept calling Jim Hinkey, who had curated the exhibit. I'm coming, I'll see it before it closes. And I don't know if was it Friday or Saturday, he called Jim and said, I'm coming Sunday. And he arrives at 4:30 on a Sunday afternoon, and we asked him if he would like to wait till the museum closes at 5:30. He said, no, let's go up and look at my exhibit now, and I'll look at the rest of the museum after that. So I think there are about 25 to 30 people that had this surreal experience of being in the top floor, or the next to top floor, and having turned around and went, OMG. There's the boss himself. And I was told one lady collapsed into complete sobbing, and another one over the corner nearly fainted. And it was a wonderful, and he loved it. He loved the museum, and it's so great when they come. Yes, we wished he'd come sooner, but he kept his promise. And I should also tell you that that exhibit is in Philadelphia. It just opened this week. Jim Hinkey, our curator, was there. And the great thing about that exhibit is it got huge props from us curating it. Jim was there doing tours and making television appearances. And so that's another outreach fashion, how these exhibits leave museum here and then play in other venues around the nation. In fact, our Women Who Rock exhibit, which only closes in another 2 weeks, you better come see it if you haven't seen it. And the meat dress is deteriorating by the day. I don't know if you know, it's a joke, it's not. That exhibit will travel for the next 4 years almost around the nation. And again, great exhibit, great cultural experience, but also a great billboard that says, come to Cleveland and see the museum.
The exhibits like this, and then also the inductions, when you have people inducted into the Hall of Fame, this really does have an effect on them as artists or bands in terms of, you know, putting focus on their careers and kind of giving a boost to their record sales.
Well, they've seen that. I mean, I think any time an artist can get the kind of recognition, because it means so much to them to be inducted into the Hall of Fame. But besides that, you know, kind of pat on the back, just when the artists are nominated, when they get inducted, it's a worldwide event as far as a PR event. I mean, people, it's picked up on every newspapers, wire services, everywhere. It's a big deal because of things we talked about before, people's passion about their, the artists that they represent. Right. So for those artists, it really kind of sometimes revives their career. I think we'd be arrogant to say it revives their career, but I think it's helpful, because I think it throws a spotlight on them that they might not have had for a while.
Well, and maybe exposes someone, like in 2009, I saw Wanda Jackson inducted. And after that, I mean, her career kind of unfolded in a little different direction, and she's on TV
and she'll
with
be the first to admit it. I mean,
Jack
she's the first
White.
to admit it. Jack White rang her up to do something. Jeff Beck, been around a long time, but then, after that inducted, all of a sudden a lot of things started to happen, because maybe it's somewhat helpful from our standpoint, but maybe it gives them a little push and it just gives them an inspiration, because like Terry said, these people don't retire. They're not baseball players, and that's it. They keep on going till they drop.
I know we all think Terry is so amazing, and his, vision for the museum and everything he accomplishes there. He's looking at me. But what I'm wondering, Joel, is from your perspective, what are some of the kind of dreams or ideas you have for what you think the Rock Hall could evolve toward?
Well, I think just to be able to draw up more business. I think there's a way, how can we get more people to come see this jewel that we have? I mean, it's such a wonderful place.
And it's arguably one of the most successful attractions of its kind anywhere.
Unquestionably.
Yeah.
You can see it. And once people get there, they just get blown away about what they see. So we always try to figure out, are there ways we can kind of extend this brand out some way? We had an annex in New York that was up for a little while. We're talking about other ideas, these traveling exhibits that we're doing. Are there ways that we can get what we do out there around the country and around the world? So ultimately, it leads people to want to make that trip to come to Cleveland and see the full thing. It's great for the museum, it's great for the city, and that's our ultimate goal.
And, it's interesting, too. For example, I know with the library you have a partnership with CASE, right? And there are probably other kinds of partnerships that you're exploring as well.
Well, educationally, we've been very fortunate. We are partners basically with all three of the universities downtown, and we have continuing conversations with what can we do with Oberlin, Kent State, and almost any of these colleges that you can think of. And because it's about rock and roll, it's the music of the people, we see ourselves as being a major collaborative agent with almost anyone out there, either educationally or otherwise, that would like to partner with us. So we invite institutions to come in and tell us, what can we do together? We really try to make that a part of the gestalt of the institution at all times.
And I think once people get a sense of what this library is, that I think it'll just open up more opportunities for us, for people to really want to be in business with us and collaborate with us as well.
All right. Well, we're going to take another quick break. When we come back, we're going to take questions from all of you.
For a wedding reception you'll always remember, executive caterers at Landerhaven.
Is it getting so frustrating at your office that it's harder and harder and harder to get any work done? You need services you can count on, starting with business class phone from Time Warner Cable Business Class. Get business class phone and receive up to 6 months free internet or cable TV. Why put up with more frustrations than you have to? Enjoy our reliable solutions. Get business class phone and receive up to 6 months free internet or cable TV. Time Warner Cable Business Class.
You live in Ohio, you work in Ohio. And when you have questions about your health insurance, you like talking with someone who's right here in Ohio. That's why you carry the Medical Mutual card. Our card comes with the best customer service anywhere. More than 2,700 dedicated employees are right here in Ohio. It's our job to take care of your healthcare needs, so you can focus on what's most important, getting well. Medical Mutual, the official health insurer of the Cleveland Indians, Cavaliers, and Browns.
You've seen their faces at the Executive Caterers Corporate Club at Landerhaven. They've talked about business, politics, the economy, healthcare, sports, and education. As a 2012 sponsor, you'll be identified with a monthly television show airing on Time Warner Cable. Your company will receive exposure in broadcast, print, and electronic advertising. Season table discounts are available. For information, call Executive Caterers at Landerhaven 440-449-0700.
Landerhaven was created for that special moment in people's lives, and that special moment is a wedding reception. From the concept to the decorations to the entrance down the staircase, creating the magic with great service, fine wine and food, an elegant wedding cake, beautiful grounds and gardens, unforgettable images. For a wedding reception you'll always remember, Executive Caterers at Landerhaven.
Welcome back to the Corporate Club at Executive Caterers at Landerhaven, and we have our wonderful guests here talking about the Rock Hall induction, Terry Stewart and Joel Peresman, and we're going to take questions from you now for this segment of the program, and we'll start right over there.
Hi, I have a question as far as reaching out to some of the new artists possibly. I know that you're obviously recognizing people who have a level of success, but there's various music venues such as Bonnaroo, things like that throughout the country. I know the university's Flash Fest was huge. Is there any efforts as far as creating those type of music festivals downtown Cleveland in conjunction with the museum?
What? I don't know if it's a question of creating festivals because, we're not in the concert promoting business. I mean, there's plenty of people around here doing that. But I think what we do is we do recognize younger artists in different genres of music that aren't inductees. I mean, we did an exhibit a few years ago that was celebrated the Vans Warped Tour. We have a new On the Charts exhibit that recognizes new artists. There's exhibits and features things from New Order and other artists that aren't necessarily inductees. So I think we do our part trying to recognize that. And with the induction ceremonies as well, we tried a lot of times bring in younger artists to represent and be part of the event that kind of pay tribute to some of the older inductees.
Yeah, the festival business is a very difficult business. It's one that typically you have to invest in it significantly financially to make it work over time. And we've tried to partner with various entities around town, and we still make that sort of statement that anyone who's willing to sort of come forward that has some ideas about that. And we have some people in the background that are still trying to make something happen in Cleveland that would embrace young bands. And we had a 2-year program with around merging bands a few years ago. But it's a very difficult very difficult thing to do, and it's really not part of our mission statement. So we have to be very careful to stay within the confines of that mission.
Okay, then we'll go to this side of the room now. Yes.
Yes. My name is Randy Carpenter with Cozy. I had a question about the induction process. I know that there's been some artists that get in as a solo artist, but then later they come in with a band or they join a band, and the artist is in, but the band is not, most notably Springsteen and E Street Band. Any thought of going back and cleaning up those kind of cases?
Well, I think that's what happened this year. I mean, this year with some of the artists, the Crickets, the Comets, some of the quote backing bands of the artists like Bill Haley or Buddy Holly that were inducted are being inducted this year. So I think it's not a perfect process, but I think it's something we take a look at. If there's situations like that we can address, we try to.
Yeah, we start out with the fact that the major criteria is you get nominated 25 years after your first recording as it is on that recording. And there's a crazy anomaly around Bruce because the E Street Band is not listed on that recording. And so when we cleaned it up this time, we started out with the bands that had this major anomaly of an artist and a group that were on the record, and the group wasn't. We looked at that very carefully. We looked at all the way across all the boards of that situation. What we did this time was really address that specific situation. I think what's great about the organization and the foundation in the induction process, it's an evolving process. We continue to look at the types of individuals and groups that should be included and how we identify them. Leon Russell last year was inducted for musical excellence because we realize there's an artist who has both a sideman situation and a recording career, and how do you identify him as one or the other? So we continue to look at the induction process, and hopefully we get it mostly right most of the time.
All right, very good. Okay, I think we have another question on this side of the room again. Yes.
Right over here.
Yeah. Do you ever see the induction ceremony coming to Cleveland on a regular annual basis? What kind of hold does New York have on this?
Sorry, what was your question?
Once every 3 years is not enough.
Well, I think we have to look at what else happens in Cleveland in those other years. I mean, it's a big undertaking to do a show like this financially. And when the sponsor base and the donor base, which are primarily made up of people on the board and people from Cleveland, it's a lot to ask to give. There's other things we need for the museum and other times of the years, whether it's towards the capital campaign, towards other events, towards exhibits, to creating things, that you just can't have everything going towards one drain of what the induction ceremonies can be.
Most of the funds that we raise during this period, and it's a 2-year period that we start building towards this, most of the funds go to creating the induction and the production value of the dinners. And normally those asks and those donations would go directly to the museum to support the museum. So 2 out of every 3 years, much of our efforts philanthropically are directed towards an event. And anybody who runs a not-for-profit will tell you that's really not the way to run an airline. You have to make sure you clear the runways often enough. It would basically kill us financially and personally if we had to do this every year. We just couldn't raise the kind of funds we do over a 3-year period.
One of the great examples of other things that you do in those other years is the American Masters, Music Masters, and I had the great fortune of seeing the tribute to Les Paul, which was one of the better experiences musically that I've ever had. It was just absolutely incredible.
Yes, I would encourage everybody to look at the other programs educationally. American Music Masters is part of our education series, and these really need a lot of our attention in other years. And it's just a very difficult, we've been working on this literally for 2 years, and right now it's eating us alive. We're spending 24/7 trying to get this done, and we've been doing this for 6 months. So as much as we'd love to have it every year, it just would be very difficult for us to do.
Okay, a question over here.
Terry, this is not a question, this is a comment. I want to say thank you, and I want to say thank you for myself, for my staff, for everybody in Cleveland, I hope. I was one of the first people to sign the petition to bring the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame to Cleveland, Ohio. You do an amazing job. You bring thousands and millions of people here, and I just want to say thank you.
Thank you.
And why isn't Rush inducted?
And before anybody says anything about Rush, let me tell you how broad that gets. And Todd Messick, our head of marketing, will agree to this, is that he can post something about this extraordinary educational program we had and how these kids came from all over and had this wonderful experience, and we'll post that on social media, and 9 out of the 10 comments will be, why isn't Rush inducted? No matter what we put out there, that's the answer to everything.
Well, you were saying you were just trying to leave a restaurant the other night and someone collared you and was talking about their
Deep Purple
passion.
Deep Purple. And it's one of those things where you can't get away. I mean, wait a minute, just one more.
Your car doesn't come quick enough.
All right, another question?
Hi, I'm Dan Hansen with ClevelandPeople.com. I think it's terrific how you're honoring the side men and side women this year. Has there been any discussion ever about honoring the institutions that have made rock, Rolling Stone magazine, CBGB's, Max's Kansas City, the Fender Stratocaster, things like that beyond performers?
We've kind of always looked at the people as opposed to, that created these things, as opposed to the institutions. So while there's a program actually that we're talking about that we have called the Landmark Series, that we've recognized some of these really interesting institutions, whether it's the Whiskey in LA or the Starlight Ballroom in Iowa, and CB's could be, GB's could be something like that. There's ways to recognize that without necessarily them being inducted. Because I get that. I mean, why don't you induct like the Woodstock Festival or such like that? They're seminal moments, but they were created by people and they were created by the artists that appeared in them. You have to figure out different ways to recognize them, through an exhibit, through recognizing them locally, but really kind of dig to the people that kind of created these things.
Would you say Spinal Tap would go into that category?
No.
Okay. The question
For
over.
Rob Reiner, yes.
It's Rob Reiner. Okay.
Hi, I'm Alex, senior at Gilmore Academy, and I was just curious, how much money does the rock induction bring to benefit the city of Cleveland? How much money?
The economic impact.
Well,
of
as
the
I said
induction.
earlier, the economic impact annually is, the last study we did a few years ago was roughly $107 million a year. I suspect that number has changed and gone higher based on inflation and the number of people that come, because most of our people come from outside the region. So the studies show that they stay 2 nights and they then go on to, besides renting cars, eating in restaurants, they go to other institutions here. So the inductions will be probably about a $15 to $20 million economic impact this year.
I know some of you are thinking this. If LeBron came back, do you think that number would go up?
Well, we're very excited because with the advent of the Horseshoe Casino, the Medical Mart, and we're partners with both those institutions already, the aquarium, we're going to see an increasing number of people from outside of Cleveland coming to our city. And yes, I know the casino is going to be largely local, but in the long run, we're going to have a larger migration of people to come see all the great assets of Cleveland. And when that happens, a large number of them are going to come to the museum, and we're going to see an even greater economic impact because of that. We are a decision maker for why people come to Cleveland and choose to come here, and we're proud of being that sort of hood ornament for that reason.
Very good.
Because Cleveland rocks, don't forget.
Cleveland does rock. I think we all need to spread the word. Cleveland rocks. Looking for other questions?
Hi, Liz Manning with the Rocky River Chamber of Commerce, and wondering if you have any thoughts about moving the induction ceremony somewhere, a bigger venue, so that more people can get a chance
in Rocky
for
River?
tickets. That would be great. That would be excellent. Yeah.
Hey, I live in Rocky. That's a good idea. Come on.
Moving it to a bigger place.
Just to bring more people into town for the event.
I don't know if we really could. I mean, could you go into Quicken Loans Arena? But I think at the end of the day, from a production standpoint, we're going to be probably close to about the same amount of people being able to fit in there if we want to keep it with the dinners aspect that we do, because you're limited by the size of the floor, how many seats how many tables you can put on it, and then from the production value of how many people you could put. So maybe if we did something there, we could put more public in there. But again, it's still an issue of availability. It's a very busy venue. The public hall works really well for our purposes. We have the time to load in production-wise to do what we need to do in there, and it still gets a great vibe. I mean, we still get 5,000 to 6,000 people in there, which is terrific.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. First of all, I want to commend all of you for your great progress in Cleveland, Ohio. But I think it's time now to think of an award that's a Cleveland award. And I'm thinking of persons like Jane Scott or Alan Freed. We need, I'm sorry, New York, I don't want to insult you, but we do.
I'm from Pittsburgh, I don't really care.
That's even worse.
Now you've done it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But Cleveland needs some of its own awards, and those are the two I'm suggesting. One that was given the credit for saying rock and roll, brought rock and roll to Alan Freed, and Jane Scott. I don't know if New York you know about Jane Scott.
I'm very familiar with Jane Scott, of course.
She's a beloved lady from around here who has just left us. But Mr. Stewart, Terry, I want to hear from you on this, because I have sent that message through a couple of times and never heard from you.
I didn't exactly hear what did you say? I'm sorry, I missed that part.
Well, Alan Freed's inducted.
Well, Alan Freed is inducted, and
You didn't hear me?
I didn't hear the last part where everybody laughed. Maybe I didn't want to hear it, but
It's time that Cleveland have its own award, and I was suggesting two names, Jane Scott and Alan Freed. And I really think that the Clevelanders need one of their own awards. Who you give it to is another thing. Maybe it's up-and-coming musicians that are local. But don't you think that Cleveland is entitled to one of its own awards? New York, what do you think?
Yes.
There you go.
I agree with what he said. Well, just to take that a bit further, yes, Alan Freed was inducted in the first year, and there's a good portion of the museum that's dedicated to his memory, along with Leo Mintz, who was his partner. But at the same time, what we're hoping to do with Jane, and it's not an induction award, but Jane will have a very significant and interesting presence in the museum shortly, and I'm not going to divulge that because it's too early, but also we're very hopeful that she will have a dedicated space in our library and archives. So what she did journalistically was groundbreaking, and we're hoping to recognize that in the near future. I think having a specific Cleveland award, that's the kind of a difficult thing because it's really about the broad history of this music all around the world, and I'm still going to go along with what he said. Yes, I agree with you. Okay.
All right. And now we're going to give the microphone to Harlan Diamond.
Well, thank you. Thank you. It's all been said. I just want to thank you very much for being here. You, Terry and Joel, you cannot believe how important the rock and roll is to the city of Cleveland. The background of Cleveland on our map shows the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. It's been the most significant addition to our city, I think, in my lifetime. Thank you.
I've been fortunate, Harlan, since I got here, and not because of Landerhaven or any of the business aspects. I can't tell you the number of times that Harlan has called me over those years and said, I want you to be here and be part of this organization because the Rock Hall's got to play a role in this. So I applaud you, Harlan, for recognizing what the museum has meant, and I thank you for all the opportunities you've brought to the museum. It's been very, very important to us.
Will you join us for coffee out there so people can talk to you? Do you have a few more minutes?
As long as they don't ask about Rush, we'll be out there. Okay.
Terry and Joel, thank you so much for talking to us today about the Rock Hall and this year's induction ceremony. Thanks to all of you for being here. I don't know about you, but I've had a wonderful time. We'll see you again. Thank you.
Thank you.
Please join us Wednesday, March 21st as Executive Caterers Corporate Club at Landerhaven hosts its annual Women of Excellence Luncheon with special guests Mary Taylor, Lieutenant Governor of Ohio, and Tammy Longerberger, CEO of the Longerberger Companies. The program will be moderated by Fox 8 news anchor Stephanie Schaefer. For reservations, please call 440-449-0700.
Corporate Club is brought to you by Executive Caterers, a special place for special occasions. Medical Mutual of Ohio, Ohio's Get Well card, offering health plans for life. Time Warner Business Class, making more of every minute with the speed you need. Inside Business Magazine, your source for business in Northeastern Ohio. News Channel 5 on your side. 90.3 Idea Stream, the all-day brain food. 8LG Computer, consulting and training. Signs PDQ, professional, dependable quality. And Jones for printing services. Supporting sponsorships are brought to you by the Greater Cleveland Partnership, a catalyst for change. Northern Ohio Chambers of Commerce. A portion of the proceeds of the Corporate Club at Landerhaven benefits Junior Achievement of Greater Cleveland.